Good afternoon. I'm making this video today because clients have had pretty similar questions recently about the coronavirus and how it's affecting the local real estate market. So I'm going to take about 5 to 7 minutes and go through some kind of top questions I've been asked and share some information related to those. I hope you find it helpful, insightful, and a good resource. But if you have a separate question that I don't get to, I hope you will reach out. Give me a call or send me an email. I'd love to resource for you in any way that I can right now. So I've kind of broken this down into 7 specific questions, and I'll get right into it. First is, are transactions even allowed? And good question, because it's been kind of unclear up until yesterday. But yesterday, Summit and Wasatch County, the 2 principal counties in our market, made a clarification that they do view residential real estate sales and the services to support them as an essential business. So it is going to allow in-person showings. It is going to allow property inspections, appraisals, title companies are open. So all the kind of necessary services for that. But we are certainly exercising extreme precautions and trying to avoid in-person meetings as much as possible. And so, for example, if you found something you're interested in, ideally what we'd like to do is a FaceTime showing or Skype or a Zoom call. Take you through and make you familiar with the property. But there's obviously instances where, hey, if you're under contract and you want to do, say, a final walkthrough, or you just have to see a place in person, you are able to do that right now. And that clarification was made yesterday. So the second question, are buyers actually in the market? Are there actually buyers in the market? And good question. There are, kind of surprisingly so. There's definitely buyers that have canceled if they were under contract, and we're seeing certainly an uptick in cancellations. We're seeing kind of a drop off in pending transactions, but there's still very much an active marketplace with buyers in it, and many buyers that are, in my opinion, entering the marketplace because they recognize that the current situation presents a pretty unique opportunity that many were not expecting, and so they're very much stepping into the marketplace and making offers. That kind of brings me to the next spot about what's the impact on value spend. Many clients kind of want to know that. From a buyer's perspective, what's an expectation to have for what properties are going for today, and sellers also curious to know, hey, what kind of hit did my property take? In answering that question, I'll tell you there's not a uniform across the board answer. To this point, the virus has affected different sub-markets differently, very, very differently. And so, for example, in the first-time home buyer market, throughout the state, within Park City, the affordable, desirable inventory, and segments of the market for which there have been shortages pre-corona, those markets still have strong demand and still have a shortage of inventory. So for the time being, we're not anticipating an influx of new inventory, and I think that's something to expect kind of going through this. We're not going to see many people race to get their properties sold with new listings, but you certainly may see sellers right now that have been on the market maybe have a little bit more motivation. We are seeing buyers who have been under contract. Some go back to sellers and try to renegotiate better prices. An exact statistic for what people are renegotiating seems to be around 5 to 10% that people are trying to renegotiate, and obviously that amount can fluctuate greatly depending upon the price point. The largest kind of renegotiation that I've heard of to this point was on a $5 million deal. Buyer had non-refundable earnest money, but went back prior to closing to the seller to say, hey, can I get 10% off? Can I get $500,000 off on the deal? And my understanding is sellers, entertaining that, and it will, likely be negotiated some type of compromise. So, certainly buyers can expect to pay less today, right, than they would have a month ago, 2 months ago. And, you should be encouraged to make offers. And certainly there are buyers that are making opportunistic offers. But they're not necessarily, encountering sellers that have the motivation that some of these buyers may expect them to. So that's kind of important to keep in mind. And that takes me to my next question, which is, how much of a buyer's market is it? The context of what's going on right now, it's important to keep in mind for buyers and for sellers. The context is that within our marketplace, the majority of properties are owned outright, free and clear. And that's been the case for going back at least 5 or 6 years. And so buyers stepping into the marketplace now, maybe their expectations are to get a screaming deal or to get a great deal, but sellers' expectations haven't necessarily changed. Their motivation to sell hasn't necessarily changed for sellers that own their properties outright free and clear. But there certainly will be, and I think as you see new listings hit the market, be mindful that hey, somebody decided to list in this environment. Certainly they're a ready, willing, and able seller that understand the circumstances around them and are going to put a deal together. So I'd be encouraged by that if you're a buyer in the marketplace, and keep an eye out on that. But also just keep in mind that it's not a wholesale environment the way that it may have been in 2009, 2010. And I don't foresee that happening, and for a number of reasons. And that kind of gets me to my next point about differences from 2008. So going into this, important to keep in mind, again, the majority of real estate in our market is owned outright, free and clear. As we step up in price points, as we get past $1 million, $1.5 million, the preponderance of outright owners is much, much greater. And so, for example, 2009 to 12, as the market was recovering, we saw a glut of inventory, and we saw buyers really feel like, hey, I've got a lot to choose from, good options out there, and no sense of urgency for putting together a transaction, as the market was very, very slowly recovering. And also, important to point out, the properties that were purchased leading up to the 2008 crash, the majority were secured with debt, some with some shaky debt, right? And people needing to get out from tight financial situations. So you saw a much, much greater seller motivation. Coming into the situation we're in today, buyers, in my opinion, over the last, at least as long as I've been in the business, that's going back, 11 years now, buyers have exercised extreme caution in purchasing. They've always wanted to make sure that they're making wise, prudent choices and prudent purchases. And then I'll also say, going back even at least 3 years, buyers in the marketplace have purchased with this kind of concern, or at least respect to the potential of an upcoming correction. That's been the case since I think really even 2016. And so people have purchased have known that, hey, the market has been appreciating, year over year, really strong rates in Park City. Is this the year that we see it plateau? That's kind of been, or correct, and see values rescind a little bit. That's the perspective we've seen most buyers exercise in the marketplace, in my opinion. But they're seeing Utah and they're seeing Park City as a safe place to put cash if we do see a little recoil in values. Still feeling like that's a good overall long-term investment, and having a very long-term game. So I think that's important. I think that's kind of a key difference from 2008. But clients are asking, where will the deals be? And my thoughts on that are that it's really not too different from the market we were in 6 months ago, 2 months ago, a year ago. The deals are to be found through making offers. We're not necessarily going to see sellers convey their motivation or convey how strong or how attractive the deal is going to be with their asking prices. And that's kind of generally always the case within Park City. People own the properties outright. They're entertaining offers, but they're not necessarily going to position their properties at a spot where it that conveys really the deal that's there to be had. I don't think that's necessarily going to change going into the situation we're in now, and its kind of early effects and the kind of early, the next, 90 days, let's call it. I don't think you're going to see sellers say, oh, hey, I'm going to go ahead and take a 15 or 20% price cut. I wouldn't expect that. Maybe the motivation is there to sell to that extent, but you're not necessarily going to know unless you make an offer. And I always tell clients that we never know unless we try. And so if you've got your eye on something, a lot of us that I've talked with, you're obviously looking in the marketplace. We're in constant contact about that. If there's something that you have your eye on, I'm encouraging clients to make an offer. If you obviously feel confident, have that long-term outlook, you're okay with a little short-term volatility. So the deals are to be explored, and you should feel encouraged to make offers. It may take patience to find that motivated seller that's going to give you the deal that you've had your eye on or have the kind of terms of the deal that you're seeking. But that's kind of my thought of where those deals will be found. And then my last takeaway, silver linings for sellers. So in this video, I've obviously underscored that we are kind of immediately in a buyer's market. And that's a shift from what was previously a much more balanced market. Where buyers and sellers, there's pretty equal leverage among them. Some markets were more of a buyer's market pre-corona, some markets were more of a seller's market, but generally speaking, the marketplace was pretty balanced. Now the marketplace, in my opinion, is definitely more in favor of buyers, considering all of the different segments, considering that some segments are still relatively a seller's market, but it's my thought that it is a buyer's market. Still, with that being said, I do think there's silver linings for sellers and good takeaways. And that's to keep in mind that you're in a community surrounded by other people that own their properties outright. You're going to see the majority of people in this marketplace, including people who have their properties on the market, including people who bring their properties on the market. You're going to see people patient to wait this out, patient to restabilize and at least get to a spot of more certainty in the marketplace. And so keep that in mind. You've got that around you. I think that that's going to hold up values to a certain extent, hold up the marketplace. And I also think a silver lining, the desirability of Park City, the desirability of Deer Valley, the desirability of Utah hasn't gone away, right? We've had a surging population in this state that will continue to surge and arguably could even surge at a greater extent as people who are going through the coronavirus right now in areas with limited resources, may say, hey, I want to really make that move to Park City. I really want to make sure I have a place to go to where I feel safe, where it's a relatively unpopulated in a strong marketplace. And I was listening to a really good podcast the other day put out by Goldman Sachs, with kind of advice to investors, obviously in the stock market for this kind of early phase of the coronavirus in America. And the advice, at least the kind of takeaway I got from that was, the prudent investors now will wait to find reliable deals and deals in markets that have the most safety or investments that have the most safety. Park City, Utah has long been seen that way. I think it will continue to be seen that way. We just have a lot of strong underlying economic conditions, a lot of strong underlying conditions within the real estate market. And so that is why I think where we're at right now, yes, we're going to see a shift in the market. It's more of a buyer's market right now, but the extensiveness of it, I don't think our area will be quite as impacted as some other markets. Certainly markets that are effectively shut down right now, where even if you're an opportunistic buyer, you can't really put together a transaction in practical terms. That's going to have a bigger toll on those markets than it currently is in Utah. And I don't think, at least what I'm being told, is that we shouldn't expect that within Utah. We should expect real estate to continue to be seen as an essential business to preserve transactions. And critical to that is because the National Association of Realtors says every 2 closed transactions creates 1 private sector job. So if we're able to maintain real estate sales here in a very desirable marketplace, in a state with a very strong economy, we're going to lessen the blows to the local economy, then lessen the blows to the local real estate market, because we're going to keep so many people, getting through this as best as possible. Certainly not business as usual. Certainly not a boom, a real estate boom, but we'll see people manage, I think, a little bit better out in Utah for the time being. And so I think that that's encouraging and will continue to attract people to our market, and a good silver lining for sellers that, hey, you own in a good spot that likely is going to make it through this with much smaller toll taken than in some areas. So those are my thoughts. Looking at my clock, the video is about 15 minutes, about twice as long as I was thinking, so I apologize for that. If you have any other questions, please reach out, give me a call, or send me an email. I do hope you and your families are staying healthy and as safe as possible. There are certainly trying times, and just know I'm here as a resource for you. And I've enjoyed talking with some of you. I hope if you're watching this, you'll reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's going on, but also want to hear that you and your family are doing well. So yeah, I'll look forward to connecting with you, and I appreciate you watching the video. Thanks.